Hello, I am Dr. Ralph Cinque, and I would like to say a few things about some matters that I'm following on the internet. Vegans who decide that they can't be vegan anymore, and they're blaming veganism for, I guess, damaging their health. Of course, lots of people who are just condemning veganism outright. And I have a few other things to discuss, but I want to begin just by showing you that I've been a vegan for decades, and I'm not weak. Okay, so 12 pull-ups, not anything to make the record books, but I am 68 years old, and I'm sure there's other 68-year-olds who can do 12 pull-ups, but you want to know something? There aren't that many. So anyway, what about this thing about vegans who are falling apart? Well, first of all, I will admit that some people adapt better to the vegan diet than others. Some people it's easy, some people it's hard, but it's a mistake to think that nobody is doing well on a vegan diet, okay? If some aren't, that's unfortunate. But don't assume from that therefore nobody can be a vegan, nobody can be strong and vital and be a vegan, because there are plenty of very well functioning vegans. Now, let me tell you though how I practice veganism. First of all, I eat a very broad vegan diet. I eat fruits, vegetables, green salads. I eat raw nuts and seeds. I eat whole grains, and I eat legumes. So I eat the whole spectrum of plant foods. I don't confine or narrow the diet to just a few things. I eat from the entire plant kingdom, and I think that that's the best way to practice veganism. But I also take some supplements. For instance, I take vitamin B12, and it's very foolish not to take vitamin B12 if you're a vegan, because there's no B12 in plant food, and the bacteria that make the B12, well, they make it in the human body, but they make it way down in the colon, beyond the point where you can absorb it. So yeah, a vegan is going to, like everybody else, have a lot of B12 in their feces, but you can't absorb it, and you really need to get some B12. So taking B12 is absolutely essential. I take vitamin D3. Obviously, you can get vitamin D from sunlight to some degree, but it's very hard to get an optimal amount of vitamin D from sunlight. They've done tests on people, for instance, who live in Hawaii and who are like surfers and runners, where they're out getting a lot of sun, and even they don't get an optimal level of vitamin D from the sun alone. So, and again, of course, most people are living in places with much less sun and are living lives with much less exposure than that. So I think taking vitamin D3 is a very good idea. You shouldn't take D2, because D2 is actually a pharmaceutical form. It's really just an analog of vitamin D. It's a vitamin D-like drug is what it is. But you really want to take the natural vitamin D, which is vitamin D3. What else? I take some zinc, and obviously there is zinc in plant foods, but there are studies that show that vegans and vegetarians tend to be lower in zinc than omnivores. It may be because of the fiber in the food and things like oxalic acid and phytic acid binding some of the zinc, making it less available. I'm sure there are plenty of vegans who are just eating really, really carefully and who are maintaining very good zinc status without taking it. But since it's cheap and since it's perfectly safe, I figure just for insurance, I'll take a little zinc, okay? What else? I take some CoQ10. CoQ10 is a vitamin-like substance, and your body can make it from other forms of CoQ, which can occur in food, like in spinach, for instance. But biological conversions in general, they tend to just fall off as we get older. And again, I'm 68. The body just doesn't do it as well. There's no guarantee that it will do it at all. So I like the idea of getting some CoQ10 into me since, again, it's perfectly safe. It's been shown to be beneficial. Can't possibly hurt me, so yeah, I take some of that. Now I also take some omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. And actually, to do that, I do something that is non-vegan. I take a very high-quality fish oil supplement. Now I know today, you can take a DHA supplement which is derived from algae. And I know that many vegans are doing that, and I know that there are vegan doctors who are recommending it, which is fine. But what occurs to me is that you really want to get both DHA and EPA, and you don't get EPA from the algae supplement. Both of them are important. The body has things it does with EPA, and there's no evidence that I know of that the body can convert DHA to EPA. DHA is the 22-carbon unsaturated fatty acid. EPA is the 20-carbon. And then ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, is the 18-carbon. And so the body can convert ALA into EPA and DHA. So it can go up. But there's no evidence that I know of that it can go down. It can downsize it. But it's also known that as we get older, we don't convert ALA to EPA and DHA very well, and especially older men. There's a research entity in Canada called the Omega Institute, and their research, they claim that men over 65 don't convert ALA to the longer chain fatty acids anymore at all, whereas women do. They claim that there's a big gender difference, that women are better at it throughout life and they retain the ability to do it, but it probably falls off for them as well, but they continue being able to do it, whereas older men, forget it. You've got to get the preformed EPA and DHA. So if the algae had both, yeah, I would prefer to take it, and I would, but since it only has the DHA, I take a high-quality fish oil supplement, and it's something that I think is worth doing because of the importance that these fatty acids have. And then one more thing, I take some taurine. Now taurine is an amino acid. It is a functional amino acid. Your body doesn't build muscles out of it. It's strictly for functional use. It's very, very important to the heart in maintaining the rhythm of the heart, the steady beat of the heart. Taurine is involved with that. It's involved with the eyes. It's involved with the brain. And another nice thing about taurine is that it actually has a relaxing effect. It's considered inhibitory on the nervous system overall. And so it can actually help with sleep. So what I do is I take taurine at night because I figure it'll help me, with sleep as well as providing something that I need. Now there is no taurine in plants, not a bit. The body has the ability to convert another sulfur-containing amino acid called methionine, which is abundant in plants. It's even more abundant in animals. Animals concentrate sulfur-containing amino acids. Plants tend to have less, but there's still plenty enough in plants that you can make some taurine, and that's the only reason vegans survive, is because they're converting some of their methionine into taurine. But again, it's one of those situations where the older you get, the less well you do it. You may not be doing it at all. And again, taurine is very important. So, and again, it's perfectly safe. I mean, it can't hurt you. It's also very cheap. So taking 1,000 milligrams of taurine a day is something that I do, and I think it's a good idea in general for vegans. Now, I happen to agree very strongly with Dr. Joel Fuhrman that the nuts and seeds are very, very good foods. I know there's a big war going on right now between him and Jeff Nelson, which was started by Jeff Nelson, who is faulting all the studies showing benefits from nuts, saying that they're financed from the nut industry, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, the nut industry, it's not like the pharmaceutical industry, okay? They're the ones that have big bucks and can just really shower money on researchers. I mean, the nut industry, they don't have that kind of money. They're not paying that kind of money to the researchers, and the researchers are not that beholden to them. No, there really are benefits to eating nuts. And another curious thing is this, that, I presume that people like Jeff Nelson, think that nuts are bad because they have fat, and they therefore are raising the level of fat in your blood, so that therefore must be damaging your arteries a little. Now, he's a bit of a chameleon, this Jeff Nelson, on this, because in one breath, he'll quickly defend. He says, "Oh no, I'm not saying nuts are bad. I eat some nuts, and yeah, they're good. It's just that they're not superfoods." But yet, in another breath, he'll say that you'll damage your arteries a little bit if you eat nuts. That not as much as eating meat, but yes, you were going to cause harm. And he thinks he's found a valid a test that he thinks demonstrates the immediate harm that nuts do, the moment that you eat them or within hours of eating them. And I reject the claims of his test, his pulse velocity test. But the interesting thing is that nuts have fat, but they don't raise the level of fat in the blood. In fact, they have the opposite effect. And this is widely reported, that nuts tend to push down the level of blood triglyceride, which is blood fat. For instance, the normal range goes all the way up to 150 for triglyceride in the blood. That's considered healthy. Well, my triglyceride that was tested last month, April, was 52. So I'm a third less than what I could have 3 times as much and still be considered healthy and normal. And I'm curious to know what Jeff Nelson's level of triglyceride is. Whether I don't automatically assume that his is lower just because he doesn't eat nuts, as much as I do. So, in other words, there isn't even the theoretical basis for thinking that nuts are doing harm because they're, increasing fat in the blood. Even that is false. I've been eating nuts every day since I was, 18 years old. Like I said, I'm 68 now. They haven't made me fat. I don't have, protruding stomach. And I don't think they've hurt me in any way whatsoever. Now, I haven't had the pulse velocity test, but I have had carotid artery ultrasound, which is measuring the flow of, how well the blood is flowing through your carotid arteries, which is a very, very common place for plaquing to take place. And I was told that mine was very, very good. The operator told me, you've got the result here of like maybe a guy who's 40 rather than in his 60s. So And the pulse wave velocity, it's not really a popular test in the United States. It's used more in Europe and Japan, but here there's not that much faith in it because the results vary so much, and there's just lots of room for operator error, and it's just not really considered that as good here in the States. If it was, they'd be using it, but it's not widely used clinically here. But in any case, I do not think that nuts are damaging to your arteries, and I do not think that people should be afraid of eating them. Now, as far as the whole debate about fat versus carbohydrate, I am totally, completely in the middle on that. I am against demonizing carbohydrate. I'm also against demonizing fat. I think both are perfectly normal. And I'll close with this. There's a curious thing to think about, and that is that human breast milk is very high in carbohydrate and fat, but very low in protein. It has only about 1% protein by weight. In some cases, women have been shown to have less than 1%, like 0.9% protein by weight. And yet a human baby can double its birth weight in 6 months, 6 to 9 months on this diet, and they're obviously growing muscle and bone and organs, and they're doing this on a growth fluid with 1% protein by weight. Now, what do you think happens if a nursing mother decides that she's going to eat the carnivore diet, just eat meat 3 times a day? Do you think it's going to push the protein in her milk way up? It might push it up a little, a fraction. That's it. You're not going to convince the body that it needs to have 5% protein in that milk, like say you might find in dog milk or cat milk or other milks. Human milk is actually the sweetest of all the milks. I think it has something like 7% lactose by weight. And if you've ever tasted it, then you remember you know that it's sweet, and it's sweeter than cow's milk, sweeter than goat's milk, more sugar for humans than for these other mammals. And as far as fat goes, human breast milk is higher in fat than the milk for cows. In other words, even a rapidly growing calf gets less fat as a percentage of the milk in its milk than a human baby does. That's how much fat is apparently required and is normal for a human infant. Now, in the modern world, of course, women don't breastfeed that long, and they don't breastfeed exclusively for very long either. And it's partly because there's so many other foods around, and just the whole modern way of life. But in primitive conditions, and even in modern conditions, I knew a woman who breastfed exclusively for 2 years. For 2 years, her child tasted nothing but her milk. No exceptions, just breast milk for 2 full years. And the child appeared to be doing well. But my point is this, so this human is born into the world, and they're introduced to this food that's very, very creamy, very, very creamy. And they're getting it multiple times a day as an exclusive article of diet. And they're enjoying the taste of it, they're getting conditioned to the taste of it. They're really, really just adapting to the taste of it and expecting the taste of it. Now, why would anyone think that after doing that for 2 years, that the natural inclination would be that this child would automatically have a taste for, now they're just going to eat nothing but what? Brown rice and other starches? There isn't a bit of starch, in the breast milk. I mean, that is not part of the, inborn, it's more of an acquired taste. And I'm not against eating starches. I eat them. I'm entirely okay with it. But the idea that we should eat them exclusively for the calorically dense part of our diet, it's wrong. It's really not the natural way to go. And I think there's a lot of, wrong information that's coming out. Like the whole idea, well, first of all, it is true that there are no natural native populations of human beings living entirely on plant food. It simply does not occur and has not occurred anywhere that we know of. Every single place in the world, human beings have always included some animal food in their diet. And I don't think that from that it means we can't live without animal food. But it does mean that we need to be very careful about what we eat and make sure that we are taking care of all the nutrient requirements that we have. But there have been false claims made, like, for example, referring to the Chinese and the Japanese, saying that, they live on rice and vegetables. Well, that simply isn't true. They eat a lot of rice, they eat a lot of vegetables, but they eat meat, they eat animal foods. The Japanese, for instance, are the biggest egg eaters in the world. They eat more eggs per capita than Americans do. So, veganism, I think it's a wonderful thing. I really do. I enjoy it. I eat a vegan diet without any cravings for any other kind of food. Don't miss it at all. And I'm hardly ever even around it. But when I am occasionally, like if I'm in someone's home and they're cooking meat, or I'm in a restaurant, it's sort of a bit of a shock, and I'm being suddenly reminded, oh yeah, that's what other people eat, because I'm just surrounded by, plant food, and it's my whole environment, at home. So, no, I love this diet. I mean, I really just have no trouble. It doesn't take any discipline for me whatsoever, and I feel strong on it. I bicycle, I swim, do hiking. I like to stay active physically, and I expect to do so for many years to come. Not planning to get old anytime soon, at least in the way I feel. So I think it's working for me, and I think really it is a wonderful way to live. But I don't think of it so much as the way of the past. I think of it more as the way of the future. I think it's a way that humans have been moving towards. But I have no reason to think that in the remote times there were any vegans. I mean, just the whole issue of vitamin B12 alone would have stopped it from happening. So I don't think we should be judgmental. I don't think we should be dogmatic about it. But I mean, I think, again, the pluses, the positives, and all the things that have been demonstrated about the benefits of eating plant food are very, very real. And the objections that are made to it are all, if not false, gross exaggerations. I mean, the idea that the phytic acid and the oxalic acid are going to hurt you, and I mean, this is all nonsense. I mean, it's all part of the natural order. We only absorb a fraction of the minerals in our food anyway, so if some of them get bound, it's probably a good thing. If you absorbed every bit of iron in your food, it would kill you. I mean, if you eat a totally unrefined diet, there might be 20, 30 milligrams of iron in it. And if you absorb that every day, you would definitely get iron toxicity. The amount of iron that we actually need is so small, it's like a milligram a day. The US government recommends 10 milligrams a day of iron, but they know that average absorption is only about 10%. So basically, the idea is you're replacing 1 milligram of iron a day. And remember, you don't urinate out iron, you don't sweat it out. I mean, your feces is the only way that you can get rid of iron. And yet, some people, they just are very good iron absorbers. And they will, and even when the body tries to push iron out, like in the bile, to get rid of excess iron, they'll reabsorb it. And they'll tell these people that, look, you need to donate blood every 3 months. to lower your iron level because otherwise it's going to be too high. So no, these kinds of objections are ridiculous, and the evidence is that there are vegan bodybuilders, vegan athletes who are doing very well, very strong, very vital. So again, if there are people who are having problems doing it, it's unfortunate, and I'm not going to disparage them, but don't assume from that there is nobody thriving on a vegan diet, because yes, there are. Thank you.